Game Pass coming to PlayStation? Does Xbox need its own Nintendo Direct? And believe it or not, Activision is much more than Call of Duty. There's also a link down in the description below with instructions on how you can win your very own Series X from me. Let's discuss. So when you heard about Microsoft's intention to buy Activision Blizzard, you probably thought two things. You were probably either like me, thinking, oh, Xbox owns Overwatch, Diablo, World of Warcraft, the Blizzard stuff. Or you were thinking, whoa, Xbox owns Call of Duty. Of course, that's before we learned that Microsoft was keeping Call of Duty multi-platform, every console that it's existed beforehand, and no one was sending threats to Phil Spencer. That was a fake IGN article that was floating around Twitter. What you may not realize is that Activision has a ton of other IPs that are not Call of Duty. I know, crazy, right? Phil Spencer told the Washington Post that he was excited to bring back some of these old franchises, these old games from the Activision locker. And here are a few that I personally would like to see revived. So first up, we have Sierra Entertainment. Now, these guys actually were founded in the same year as Activision, but they weren't affiliated with each other until Activision merged with their parent company, Vivendi Games, becoming what we now know as Activision Blizzard. Now, there are two franchises that fall under that Sierra Entertainment umbrella that personally interest me. Now, one of these games is King's Quest. It's developed by The Odd Gentleman. It is a series that dates back all the way to 1980. It is a graphic adventure game that centers around storytelling, puzzles, and great characters. It's considered an all-time classic and one of the franchises that put Sierra Entertainment on the map in the first place. Now, I never played the original games, but I played the reboot that they did in 2015 and I loved it. This is a series that has a lot of potential if Microsoft chooses to revive it. Of course, I would prefer them to stick to that old school kind of feel rather than take it into like, let's make it an open world game or something crazy like that. At the very least, I think they should put that 2015 version onto Game Pass once the deal is through. Now, as we've seen recently, horror games are all the rage right now, right? The whole Resident Evil series, Five Nights at Freddy's, Phasmophobia was huge. Everyone loved watching that on Twitch. Now, if Microsoft wanted to develop their own horror franchise, they might consider bringing back Phantasmagoria. Now, Phantasmagoria was a game that was released in 1995. It was a point-and-click adventure horror game that featured real actors. And while it may look cheesy nowadays, looking back on it, it was reviewed very well and it was super controversial. Everyone was saying, oh my gosh, it's so violent, it's so gory, it's too dark, this game is too crazy. Next up, we have Raven Software. Now, Raven Software nowadays is known primarily for being a support studio for Call of Duty. And if you go to their website and scroll through the Our Game section, that's pretty much all it is, right? It's just a ton of Call of Duty games. But they have worked on some stuff in the past that's pretty interesting to me. So believe it or not, Activision used to put out a lot of superhero stuff. I personally fondly remember the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man games that they used to do, and Raven actually did a couple of games like that too. They did the original Marvel's Ultimate Alliance, they did X-Men Legends 1 and 2, Star Wars Jedi Knight, they did, I think, the Wolverine Origins game. I feel like everyone is looking to Microsoft, Xbox, to do some sort of superhero game, right? Superheroes are all the rage right now, and over on PlayStation side, you have Insomniac's Spider-Man, and of course you have the upcoming Wolverine game. I know it's kind of like a rights legal nightmare, but it's not entirely outside of the realm of possibility to get some sort of iconic character like that into an Xbox game. Obviously we have Jack Sparrow and Sea of Thieves, so like I said, not impossible to get someone from the Disney stable at least onto an Xbox game. I know a lot of people want Singularity to make a comeback as well. This was the last title that Raven worked on before switching to Call of Duty support, and it's a shooter, first-person shooter, but it also combines really sick powers as well, a la, BioShock or a game like that. But I personally don't know how much they're hurting for another game like that. Now that they have Arcane Studios, who obviously did Dishonored, they did Deathloop, and now they have Redfall coming out, I think they're good on games like that. Radical Games, now these guys have been working as a support studio for Destiny for the past couple years. Now that Sony owns Bungie, everyone's kind of like, what are these guys gonna get into next? And I'll tell you what we want them to get into next, and that's put out Prototype 3. Now, if you don't remember Prototype, you played as this guy named Alex, who was a shapeshifter, but also had amnesia, he didn't have any memories, and basically what it was is that you used your shapeshifting powers to just pull off sick feats of traversing around New York, torque and doing all this crazy combat stuff. I mean, I feel like these games back in the 2010s were really popular, right? You had Prototype, you had Infamous, you had Crackdown, and you don't really see games like that anymore. I feel like the closest kind of vibe that we have right now that compares to those games are Insomniac Spider-Man, but you don't really see too much of this, so if they brought it back, I really feel like it could do well. I know this next studio doesn't technically exist, but what I'd like Microsoft to do is round up the remaining guys from Neversoft that merged with Infinity Ward and do two things. One, put them back on the Tony Hawk train. Now, Vicarious Visions were the guys who did the most recent Tony Hawk game, Tony Hawk 1 and 2 back in 2020, but I feel like with the right support, Neversoft could really thrive and get their old mojo back. And you know, skating games, I feel like are still really popular. There's still a demand for them, as we saw with Tony Hawk 1 and 2. I think it sold 1 million copies in just 10 days, so there's money to be made in that genre. Also, revive Guitar Hero, right? Nostalgia, it's a powerful thing. So I feel like bringing back Tony Hawk, bringing back Guitar Hero, kind of simulating those experiences that people had 10, 15, 20 years ago, there's a lot of money to be made in that, right? But if you did bring back Guitar Hero, don't fuss with like all the extra hardware, right? Just focus on the guitar. Don't do the whole DJ Hero. As much as I loved Rock Band, don't bring back the whole Rock Band kit, the drums, the bass, the singing. You know, that's a whole different thing. That's too much. Just focus on the guitars. And it has to be probably, if they bring back Guitar Hero, a 10-year title, right? Just release one Guitar Hero and then you just update it with different songs, like Beat Saber, different song packages and things like that. The demand for rhythm games is still pretty popular, so I feel, again, there is money to be made in that right now. So there's hardly ever a time when Nintendo does something where I think, oh man, how's Xbox gonna respond, right? No disrespect to Nintendo. I love Nintendo products. I love their games. They've brought me and my wife and many of my friends a lot of happiness over the years, but I don't view them as a direct competitor to Xbox in the same way as PlayStation is, right? And that's what I love about Nintendo, right? They just do their own thing, right? They're not trying to give you the most powerful console with the most mind-blowing, immersive, realistic games. They're just saying, hey, we're gonna give you a console with the Switch that is portable, that's handheld. We know people love that because they love the Game Boy, the DS, the 3DS, all that stuff. And we're gonna give you better versions of the games that we have been doing, you know, with Mario, Legend of Zelda, Pokemon, all the JRPGs that they got. So they're just doing their own thing, and I love that. But the latest Nintendo Direct has people wanting Xbox to do something similar, and I think that'd be something that's great for fans. Now, that's not to say that Microsoft isn't doing cool stuff with Xbox, right? Game Pass is kind of like the great experiment that's really kind of becoming successful and gaining some traction. It's a very forward-thinking, pioneering concept, right? And they're usually pretty good at being transparent. The Microsoft team, any development team on Twitter, they're constantly doing blog posts and things like that. For example, if you go to Halo Support's Twitter account right now, you'll probably find them engaging with fans in some way, giving updates about Halo Infinite. You know, that's not to mention all the other blog posts that come out regarding game updates and things like that. I'll tell you what Xbox is not upfront about though, and that's their upcoming games in terms of showing off gameplay, in terms of letting us know when to expect the games, right? You know, we didn't see gameplay from Halo Infinite's campaign until like a month before the game released, right? We still haven't seen anything about Starfield's gameplay. You know, they had some good moments, you know, like at the Game Awards when they showed off Hellblade 2, and you know, they had some really cool stuff at the Xbox 20th anniversary showcase when they announced that, oh, Halo Infinite's multiplayer, it's dropping early, yay, and we were all freaking out. But what makes me jealous about the Nintendo Direct stuff is that it's just way more consistent with their updates, right? 4 times a year, every 3 months, instead of, you know, waiting for these big events like the Game Awards, like E3, to just dump a bunch of information on you. Now, in the past, they have tried this a little bit with Inside Xbox, but I feel like a couple of those, the host to game ratio was completely out of whack, right? They talk about things for forever before they got to the actual good stuff that we wanted to see. Here's what I think, in my humble opinion, they should do. First off, do it like Nintendo Direct, where you tell the gamers, you tell your fans what games you should expect in the next 3 months. Next up, you have a similar segment, but it's all about Game Pass, right? What can you expect to come to Game Pass and leave Game Pass within this 3-month period, right? Really emphasize the day and date stuff that is coming to the service as well. And finally, if you have gameplay from some of the big guns coming up, Starfield, Fable, Perfect Dark, those games, show it off. Let us get excited about it. If you don't, kind of go and highlight what you're working on in that process right now, right? Say, hey, I'm Ray, and I'm from Playground Games, and I'm gonna show you some character models that we're working on for Fable right now, and some of the armor and weapons that you'll find in the game. Or hey, I'm Ray, I'm from Machine Gun Games, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the combat system we're trying to implement in the Indiana Jones game that we're working on, and we're gonna tell you the basic story and characters that you'll encounter in the game. They could sort of do it like the Dead Space guys when they were talking about the remaster version. Say, hey, this is what we have right now. It's super, super rough, but this is what we're working on. This is what we hope it will become. They showed like some of the combat stuff and some of the gore mechanics. Again, they were saying it's super rough, but it was still cool and it got fans excited all over again for the game. Now, this is all easier said than done, but I think it can go a long way with keeping fans engaged, keeping them excited. Maybe you even do like more specific updates, kind of like Nintendo does with Pokemon and things like that, but you have, you know, an update all centered around Halo Infinite and the road ahead for that. So we're sort of living in this bizarro world where games you wouldn't normally associate with a certain platform are appearing on that platform and other platforms, right? I think the easiest example of this, the earliest I would say, is probably any game made by Rare. Now, if you need a refresher on who Rare is, they are a studio that worked pretty closely with Nintendo back in the day and made games like Banjo-Kazooie, Battletoads, Conker's Bad Fur Day, and it was a big surprise when Nintendo passed on the opportunity to buy them, allowing Microsoft to swoop in and buy them up for themselves. Now they have the Rare Replay on Xbox consoles that gives you access to 30 classic Rare games, and now you can play Banjo-Kazooie on your Xbox console, which is crazy because I remember playing that on my N64. I remember the box art so clearly, seeing it in retail stores, in Blockbuster, so it's kind of wild to see. Now, more recently, we're starting to see this kind of pop up, you know, studios being bought, rights being swapped by companies. Psychonauts 2 is an Xbox Studios game, but you can play it on PlayStation, right? Deathloop, again, technically an Xbox Studios game, but you can only play it on PlayStation consoles. It's very weird. And this is something that would blow my mind if I was a kid and I saw that. I know we all did this, where we took an Xbox disc and put it in our PS2 or vice versa just to see what would happen, right? Well, it looks like stuff like this is just gonna keep happening, and if all goes according to plan, Microsoft wants to create an open app store that you can access on any device, not just Xbox consoles, not just PC, Windows devices, any device. So in the wake of the Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal, Microsoft published this write-up on their website titled Adapting Ahead of Regulation, Principled Approach to App Stores. And the gist of this is that they want to create an open app store that you can use across devices to kind of navigate all these regulations that are coming down on tech, on video games, and things like that. Now, there's a lot to this article, but most gamers are going to be interested in this specific paragraph right here. To be clear, Microsoft will continue to make Call of Duty and other popular Activision Blizzard titles available on PlayStation through the term of any existing agreement with Activision. And we have committed to Sony that we will also make them available on PlayStation beyond the existing agreement and into the future so that Sony fans can continue to enjoy the games they love. We are also interested in taking similar steps to support Nintendo's successful platform. We believe this is the right thing for the industry, for gamers, and for our business. So it looks like these now Xbox franchises like Call of Duty, like Overwatch, like Diablo, they're not only going to be on PlayStation, but they're also probably going to make their way over to Switch in some capacity, which is weird, right? Because when was the last time you heard of PlayStation, Sony, or Nintendo looking to support their titles on the Xbox, right? It just doesn't happen. So supporting these titles on other platforms, wanting to create an open app store that you can use on other devices, this just kind of goes along with what I think the direction that Xbox is moving towards, right? Which is a console agnostic, games as a service business. They said, our vision is to enable gamers to play any game on any device anywhere, including by streaming from the cloud, app stores on the most relevant and popular everyday devices like mobile phones, PCs, including Windows PCs, and in time, the cloud, are important to realizing this vision. They also bring up the fact that consoles are sold at a loss, which we've covered in previous videos as well. Emerging legislation is not being written for specialized computing devices like gaming consoles for good reasons. Gaming consoles specifically are sold to gamers at a loss to establish a robust and viable ecosystem for game developers. So yes, as we all know, hardware, that's not the thing, right? These consoles, that's not the end game, right? It's selling the games, selling the services like Xbox Live, PS Plus, selling Game Pass. That's what they want. And I feel with this new direction that the gaming department is moving in, it falls more in line with who we know Microsoft is as a company. What do we know Microsoft for, right? Windows. Sure, they make PCs, right? They make the Surface line, and they sell pretty well, but nowhere near as well as you compare them to Apple, to Dell, the big PC makers, right? They make the hardware, and Microsoft comes in and sells the operating system, the software, right? Also, the emphasis on the open part of the App Store is pretty intriguing to me as well. They want to treat all apps the same, whether they are Microsoft's own or someone else's. They won't make developers use Microsoft's payment system, and they also won't be penalized if they choose to opt out of that. All pretty good sounding, but you know, as we know, these things in practice turn out to be a little bit differently than these lofty, you know, kind of ideals that they have set for them. You know, all of the complaints about Microsoft having exclusivity over Bethesda stuff, over ZeniMax's stuff, it all kind of goes away if Sony allows this App Store, or Game Pass even, to come to PlayStation consoles, right? You can buy a PlayStation, you can use it to play all those awesome exclusives that are coming out, and if you want, you have the option to download, say, Game Pass and play all the exclusives that are coming out for Xbox. That'd be pretty cool. I feel like gamers would really, really like that. But at least with Sony, we know that they're working on their own version of Game Pass, Spartacus, so I really doubt something like that would happen, but we'll see. It would be cool. Anyways, guys, that's all the news I have for today. If you're tuning in for the first time, my name is Ray. I would very much appreciate it if you went on over to Twitter and followed me at StayXboxReady. There's also a link down in the description below with instructions on how you can win your very own Series X from me. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.